So should we be worried about Jalen Green? I mean, he's been having it rough. Last time I checked, his true shooting percentage in January is in the low 40s, which if you know what a normal true shooting is supposed to look like, which for most guys is in the 50s, is really concerning. So this made me want to look historically, like I usually do, at other players that fit the same profile as Jalen. These are players that were drafted highly, came in with expectations, and were really, really young. So I looked at 3 other players, and the 3 players are going to be Devin Booker, Zach Lavine, and Kobe Bryant. For Devin Booker and Zach Lavine, I'm going to look at their playing style stats and see how they compare to Jalen Greens. And for Kobe, we're going to just look at some different shot profiles for the 3 of them and see how they compare to Jalen's as well. So NBA.com started tracking play styles in 2015, so we couldn't include Kobe in this section, but Devin and Zach are going to be in this section to see how Jalen compares to them. So the first play style stat we're going to look at is pick and roll ball handler. So obviously the Rockets run a lot of pick and rolls. We are a pick and roll heavy team, and Jalen has been in the mix in those pick and rolls. In fact, he's our best pick and roll ball handler on the team. We're going to use points per possession as the measure of how they're doing. Jalen is at 0.84, which is about league average. So he's a league average pick and roll ball handler for a 2 guard. And if you look at Devin Booker's sophomore year, Devin was at 0.78, which is about where KPJ is right now. And Zach Lavine was at 0.72 in the points per possession. So Jalen is actually a good pick and roll ball handler. Keep that in mind, because at the end, I'm going to talk about what I think he needs to do and things he needs to improve on. The next thing we're going to look at is isolations. This is where Jalen is really, really, really weak at and really disappointing. If you look at his points per possession in isolation, it's only at 0.84, which is in the 36th percentile, while Devin Booker was at 0.94 his sophomore year, and Zach Lavine was at 0.92. So they were both in the 70th percentile for the NBA, which is the upper third of the league in isolations. Jalen is really, really weak in isolation, and this is a theme that I'm seeing about him. Jalen doesn't have a bag, guys. He doesn't have a bag, and I think that's one of his biggest issues amongst many others, that he doesn't have a bag, and you know, there's a lot of reasons for that right now. Obviously, to me, if you look at Devin Booker, so obviously for me, if you look at some of the players like Devin Booker, like Kobe, you'll be able to notice that, you know, as we go through this, they have a very diverse offensive game. And speaking of offensive games, let's look at post-ups. Have you guys ever seen Jalen Green do a post-up? I haven't, and neither is NBA.com, because there's no stats for that for him. He doesn't meet the minimum requirements of a post-up. While Devin Booker in his sophomore season was averaging 1.3 post-ups per game and generating 1.01 points per possession in those post-ups, he was in the 83rd percentile. Now, you got to know something about Devin. His dad was in the NBA. So Devin was groomed to be a baller, and you know, for a guy that's not as athletic as Jalen or Zach, and Zach didn't have any post up his sophomore year either, you can see that there's a trend there for a 2 guard like Devin, who is more of a skill player than a super athlete like Jalen and Zach, that he had to get a more diverse game in order to make it in the NBA. The next play style we're going to look at is spot up shooting. Obviously, a spot up is just a set shot, and for this as well, Jalen is pretty bad. He's not a great shooter right now, especially this season. And you guys can see in the games, he's missing a lot of open shots. You know, this, I don't know what this is attributed to, but you know, I suspect that he is hitting fatigue, and this rookie, or he's a sophomore, so this sophomore wall is definitely something that he's going through right now. But Devin Booker was a great spot up shooter, and Zach Lavine was an elite spot up shooter. Devin Booker 1.07 points per possession in spot up. Zach Lavine 1.16. Zach Lavine was in the 90th percentile, so he's up there with KPJ levels of spot up shooting, while Jalen is 0.92, which is in the 31st percentile. And having a sub 1 spot up shooting is really, really bad, because a lot of those shots are threes. So that should tell you that Jalen is not a great set shooter right now. So keep in mind what his strengths are. So we know he's pretty good in the pick and roll. He doesn't post up. He's not a great spot up shooter. So just keep those in mind as we go through this video. The next thing we're going to look at is dribble handoffs. This is a strength of Jalen's. Jalen thrives in dribble handoffs and handoffs overall. He is generating 1.03 points per possession, which is in the 66th percentile. And Devin Booker and Zach Lavine, you know, they were pretty good as well. Devin Booker not so much. He was 0.6 points per possessions, which is actually terrible, and Zach Lavine was 1.01. So Jalen is a better handoff player, and if you watch him play, obviously we know when he cooks, when he's running screens off with Şengün. If you watch my video about the game he scored 41 points in, you can see where he's able to get a lot of his shots coming off of those screens, especially when those bigs are in the drop. He comes off those screens, gets into his bag, and is able to shoot from there. If you look at the frequency of him getting these handoff shots, it's only at 8%. So he's getting those 8% of the time, while in some of the other frequencies, they're much higher, which is kind of concerning for the offensive play style that we do. For example, in isolation, Jalen is at 11.8% despite being a terrible isolation player. Those are when he tries to attack a man one-on-one. Not in his bag right now. That's not his game. He's a guy that needs a lot of actions and things to run off and a lot of movement in the offense for him to get going. And once he gets going, he starts cooking. So you'll notice like the Kings game just finished. Late in that game, Jalen was doing well in the third quarter when the ball was moving, but in the fourth quarter when it was time to basically get a bucket and the movement stagnates a little bit, but when they give him the ball to get a shot off, he just can't do it because that's not in his game right now. So he's not a great isolation player. He's a great handoff player. He can run the pick and roll. So keep in mind, we're building a profile for Jalen. So another thing that I wanted to point out about Jalen is not only coming off handoffs, also coming off screens. He is generating 1 point per possession, which is actually pretty good. That's in the upper third in the 64th percentile. Devin Booker was only 0.89 and Zach Lavine was 0.87. So basically, Jalen has the profile with his play type and what his strengths are of a shooter. He has a profile of a shooter that can't shoot, and I think a lot of it is attributed to the situations that he's in and him just missing a lot of open shots. What could be causing this for him to be missing all these shots? I also wanted to look at some of his where he's making his shots at and how that compares to some of these other guys. So this is where the great Kobe Bryant comes into play. So the first thing we're going to look at for this is his shot distance. Looking at Jalen's shooting from the rim and other positions, you can see that he is in line with pretty much everybody. He's making his shot 62% at the rim for that, and that's pretty good. The only person that has a higher at the rim shooting than him is Zach Lavine, and so Zach Lavine is really a super uber athlete, and that kind of meets the eye test. You can see Jalen is a uber athlete as well, and that's where they're going to have their strengths at. When we get into the 3 to 10 foot range, so these are close mid ranges where you would see a lot of post ups and things like that. The king of that is Devin Booker, and you can see that Jalen is not bad in this situation as well. When he's closer, those are those floaters and things like that, but Devin is the one shooting 45% from here. You can see Kobe's in the 30s, Jalen is in the 42%. When you get to the 10 to 16 foot range, this is your mid range, kind of your elbow jumpers and things like that. This is also Devin Booker time. Him and Kobe have close to the same percentage, but Devin Booker takes the cake just by a little bit. Then you get to 16 to 3 feet. This is kind of the long mid range shots that everybody hates. This is Devin Booker time, and he's still hitting these shots today. And if you know Devin's game is very nice, man. Anything inside the 3-point line, that's where he makes his money. Very diverse offensive game, and as I said earlier, a lot of his game is built on skill, while guys like Zach Lavine and Jalen Green try to build their game on athleticism. And if Jalen is going to be like Zach Lavine, you'll notice that development arc takes a couple more years for him to build that skill. It's not saying it's impossible, but to build the skill to get up to the level where you can diversify your offense, and when teams start packing the paint on you and daring you to shoot, or where they start playing the 3-point line and packing the paint and force you to have to do something in the middle, you got to have that counter. And you can see that for Devin Booker, a guy that's not going to provide the rim pressure, that's not going to be, shooting a bunch of threes, that's something that he had to develop. And obviously, I think this is also something with the AAU system. These kids aren't being taught how to hoop. They're being taught how to get a bucket, but they're not being taught the fundamentals of the game, work in the post, the footwork, all the little nuances of being a player. And to me, that's where I really love Devin's game, because he's an all-around basketball player in that aspect. And when it comes to the 3-point line, surprise, surprise, Kobe Bryant is the king of that stat for his sophomore year, but he only made 72. I think he took about 140 something. of them. So if we're going to really give it to the high volume shooters, the best 3-point shooter there was Zach Lavine at 39%. So you can see Jalen is at 32%, which is really, really bad. That's really bad. Josh Giddey shoots better from 3 than Jalen Green right now. That should be concerning. That should be something that we could be concerned about. One thing I'm also noticing with Jalen is the fact that he is kind of downtrending, but one thing you can be hopeful about for him, because as I said before, for the 2 guard position, this position takes years to really reach their full peak and potential. It's not like the ball handlers, like point guards that come into the game where they get to make an immediate impact. It's not like a center that comes into the game that makes an immediate impact on defense. The point guard makes an immediate impact on offense. The small forward may make an immediate impact if they're a 3-and-D player. Even to a lesser extent, a power forward may make an impact as a stretch power forward, a guy that can hit shots. A 2 guard is an off guard that plays off of the point guard, right? That's why they call it an off guard, because you're off the ball. And if your system isn't predicated on ball movement that gets you involved in the game, then the only way you can get the ball is by being on the ball. And that's what we're seeing with Jalen. He is a 2 guard that is being groomed to play some point guard. And I think I actually love it. I don't like the system that they're in right now, but I like the fact that he's getting these skills, because we can see that his pick and roll offense is league average. So, the way I look at it is that you're getting a guy that is basically on track with Devin Booker and Zach Lavine in certain aspects of his game. He has no bag. If I'm going to lean him towards anybody, it's going to be between Book and Lavine. It's going to be Lavine right now, because Lavine took a couple years to develop his arsenal of offense. But the difference is that he already has the playmaking potential of a Devin Booker, and it took Devin a long time to become that guy that could run point guard. And I think Jalen can be there as soon as next year, where he can just be on ball, because I think a lot of his playmaking abilities are really high level for where he is right now as a 20-year-old. This trend chart that I wanted to look at also, looking at their EFG percentage by month. And I think this is important to keep in mind, because I want you guys to notice there's always a little dip when you get to December. And I have a theory for that. For young players, when they hit that December coming into January, there's usually a slump, because I believe that they get fatigued. And usually it comes in the when they get to the All-Star break before they see that uptick. We saw it with their rookie years. I think that lingers into the sophomore year. If you look across the NBA, a lot of the sophomores are struggling, except Franz Wagner, who is probably the best and most consistent player right now in the 2021 draft class. So he is very, very consistent. But most guys, look at this. You see Book, Lavine, and Jalen are all kind of downtrending. One thing with Jalen, his highs are really high. You can see his EFG in the month of November is 55%, which is higher than a lot of the 2 guards that we're comparing him with at his age. So that drop is not even the worst drop. The worst slump there belongs to Zach Lavine. He was down to in the 42 percentile. This month is not looking great so far, but I still think that he's going to come out of it looking good, because historically that's what happens. You're going to see an uptrend in his shooting this month, and next month and into the rest of the year, he'll get back on track. And that's really what history tells us. I love looking at history to tell me about the game, because, things are just the same. Different people, same story. The only person that's different in this chart, which is pretty cool to me, is Kobe, that he never had that slump. He actually had his slump all the way in January. I think his body finally failed him, but I'm going to call that, his slump happened in March actually. That's the Mamba mentality. That guy was a workaholic, and that's where, to me, where Jalen, I need him to really improve more. Number one, his conditioning. You can tell in the fourth quarters of games, he gets tired, he gets fatigued, and he's not able to finish out as strongly as he started. And you could tell that a lot of this stuff that he's going through with his shooting, his shots are short, and he's missing on the front of the rim. Those are legs. And his drives, he's not able to finish. His body is going to take time, but he's not strong enough to finish on a lot of his drives. And this comes down to just conditioning and work ethic. I did not like the fact that he was on a world tour this summer going around. He said he had his trainer with him, but the main focus needs to be basketball, bro. If he wants to be one of these guys, even a Zach Lavine, if he wants to be one of these guys, do Do you think Kobe would have been touring the world in his sophomore season? This is the guy that would hoop anywhere, a workout warrior. You know, there was a thing that Jalen said that he was up at 9:15 a.m. working. 9:15? I mean, like, y'all know about the Mamba mentality. That's what I need to see from Jalen going forward in the rest of the season. He has to change his mentality. Basketball is not easy. The NBA is not easy. You're not going to be giving it to you just because you're a top pick or you can dunk. You got to have a bag. His bag is very limited. This offseason, he needs to work on his bag. I need to see him get more strength, keep adding muscle, keep getting stronger, get in the post, get in your mid-range bag, learn to use floaters like he's doing, learn to work the glass. He has to have a more diverse offensive game. He needs to finish better as well to be in the class of some of these guys that are on this chart with him. But, you know, for Jalen, that's just what he has to do. But if you look at this trend of the downtrend, he is not doing that bad. I think in the big picture of things, we just have to accept that this is the normal progression of a two guard. And I think that whatever outcome for his career that's going to be there, it's still going to be there. And despite all the turmoil that is going on with the Rockets right now, we also have to consider that impact on him. Despite the lack of a point guard on the team, that has an impact on him. Despite having an offensive system that's consistent, having lineups that are consistent, having minutes that are consistent, having a rotation that are consistent, all of that is going to be an impact. But you know what? A lot of these players went through that when they were drafted because they're so good. That's why they were on bad teams. So am I worried? The only thing I'm worried about for Jalen is some of the effort stuff. And I think he can clean that up. That's just him getting out of his head. Yes, you're losing. Yes, you're on a bad team. But who cares, bro? You're a leader on the team. You need to show by example. You can't hang your head and wait for something to happen. You got to go get it. So for him, I need him to pick that up. Pick up your effort. Pick up the defense. Get focused on that end. If you're not going to shoot well, do everything else better. Work harder. Lead by example. Be a leader. Be more vocal. There's so many things that he could show to be better. Those are the things I'm concerned about. When it comes to his shooting, I'm not concerned at all. I think it'll pick up. In fact, I'm gonna wager that on my reputation on it, that by after the All-Star break and going into the rest of the year, you're going to see a big uptick in his shot making, and everything is going to look back to normal, and everybody's going to be on the green train like they were. So I'm not worried about it. I do want him to do a lot of soul searching on what type of player he wants to be, and I think the best thing the Rockets could do is get him some mentors to help guide him, because I feel like a lot of our young guys are lost. But I want y'all to let me know what y'all think. Do y'all think Jalen's going to be a bust? I know a lot of people are out on him, but let me know in the comments. And as you know, if you're not subscribed to this channel, stop stealing our great content and watching it without giving us your subscription. Don't be lame. It's a new year. Be a better person and just subscribe to the Chop Shop, because you know we always come with that fire.